So then Wolves remain winless in the Premier League after a frustrating end to today's game at Molineux. It's finished Wolves 1, Manchester City 2. And yeah, a real kick in between the legs when we conceded that late goal, to be completely honest. Quite controversial, which I'll get to. But a couple of changes. We saw the switch to the back five. We saw Jose Sarr, interestingly, come back in goal. And I think in terms of game plan, what Gary O'Neill planned to do worked to a degree, as daft as it sounds, because we lost the game. But everything in open play probably pretty much worked how he would have wanted it to. We came with a clear plan there. Defensively, a hell of a lot more organised, and we made things very difficult for City in terms of allowing them clear-cut chances. They had very few. Of course, the goal, Vardiol's finish was very decent from the edge of the area, and then obviously conceded from a set piece. In terms of going forward, I think Wolves probably would have wanted a little bit more. You know, took our first chance brilliantly well, working the ball down the right-hand side, Semedo, and then beautiful ball right across the face of goal, and Jurgen Strand-Larsen on the end of it. That's what Wolves would have wanted to do, beat City on the transition, beat them on the counter-attack, and that one almost worked perfectly, and it's good to see Jurgen Strand-Larsen on the score sheet again. I think the third goal for him now so far this season. And Wolves did well, but every time I looked up at the clock at Molineux, it just seemed to be going so slowly. Seemed like I've been watching the game for at least half an hour, and in real time it had been less than 5 minutes. And then of course we have the goal that Vardiol puts in. I mean, the technique and the quality of the finish is unbelievable. Should one of the midfielders maybe been a little bit tighter to him? Probably. But really can't take anything away from the finish. But other than that, Semedo had a really good chance again on the counter, quick, turnover. Cunha plays the ball through, and Semedo, through on goal, and not known for his sort of goal scoring ability at Wolves, Nelson Semedo. It was almost the right place and the wrong player. I think if you play that ball through to Cunha or to Strand-Larsen, you're probably making that 2-0 and Wolves in a much stronger and better position. But no disrespect to Semedo, just seemed to be the wrong player, and he almost panicked a little bit with the finish. To go in at 1-1, I think Wolves would have been happy with that. So Tommy Doyle come on at half time for Andre. And the second half was very similar to the first, really, sort of backs against the wall, 11 men behind the ball for straight City. And, it worked for the majority of the second half as well. We saw Carlos Forbes come on, and his first real sort of attack caused a little bit of problem. He dragged a left-footed shot wide. Could have seen, if someone was arriving late, could have easily become a cross with the way that he put it across goal. Other than that, I thought Tommy Doyle did really well, in terms of the midfield. Aït-Nouri at times, not necessarily caught out, but pushing forward a little bit, going a little bit more central. And Tommy Doyle's awareness and filling in at left wing back at times, worked quite well. Carlos Forbes, I felt could have caused more problems if he wanted to. He was sort of very static in that sort of left wing position, and as soon as we get possession, for me there wasn't a lot of urgency from Wolves, and that's probably a team instruction, to be fair, to be very structured, to be very disciplined and hold their position. But I felt if you had just one player having almost a free role, that could have worked, and Forbes even creating the runs and maybe even to drag players out could have worked. We saw Gonzalo Gedge come on as well, and at times he didn't really want to take the risks that that he could have done. But the controversy comes right at the end of the game, where City have a corner. They had a string of corners really, and the ball comes in, and a lot of their corners were going deep, and it's sod's law. This one goes right on the penalty spot, and John Stones looks like a really strong header, heads it right down the throat of Sarr really, but so much power on it. Difficult for Sarr to get hold of. Took a few moments for then the linesman to put his flag up, and I didn't really, I didn't really know at the time, but sort of it came across my mind that the only thing really is that someone's got to be in Sarr's line of vision, and when the referee goes to the monitor, you think, hold on, we've got a chance here to snatch that point that we need, and I feel like a bit of a donut, to be honest, because when the referee came back on and did the VAR signal, I started celebrating. And giving it large to the City fans, and obviously the referee was signalling that he was giving the goal, so I looked like a bit of an idiot, to be completely honest. But frustrating. And look, I've looked at it back a little bit. I think the main frustration from Wolves fans is that obviously we had one disallowed, pretty much the exact same last season, Chirewa, for Kilman's header. That should have stood. So I think it's the lack of consistency really. And do I think this one should have stood? Probably, but I think it's a lack of consistency really from the Premier League and the PGMOL, that why have we had a goal disallowed, which is very similar to this one. I think this one's probably even worse, the fact that Bernardo's backing into Sarr and obstructing him even more. When you've got some of the stills when John Stones is literally headering the ball, so Silva's almost out of the way of Sarr, but I think if you play that whole thing in real time, I think Silva does enough to obstruct Jose Sarr and make life very difficult for him, you know, and completely put him off balance and sort of has to readjust. So I think it's harsh on Wolves, but ultimately, you know, defensively structured. I think Gary O'Neill will be happy with that. The way that we were so poor defensively to hold City and reduce them to very little clear-cut chances, great. But ultimately, Wolves are still winless, and you know there's only so much longer now where Wolves can say, "Oh, it's okay. We played well. We did what we could. You know, we can't go on like that. We can't go to Brighton away next week and again have a goal lead and throw it away and say, oh, yeah, we've lost, but yeah, it was okay." Ultimately, it's a results business, and Wolves need to, you know, get some wins and find some somewhere. Hopefully, it is next week away at Brighton, but today feels like a pain because we've gone into that game 99% of us probably thinking we're not going to get anything out of the match. But for 95 minutes, we were in that match. And for a good amount of time, we were actually ahead in that match. So, frustrating. Gives Gary O'Neill a bit more time. I think he would have had the time anyway. But ultimately, Wolves need to try and get some wins. Positive for me, look, we've scored again. I think, you know, it's only one game in the whole of the season where we've gone without scoring. But for me, I'd probably stick with the back five. I felt we looked okay defensively. I think we've got to do that until we win another match. And I think if you play like that and maybe with a little bit more, allow the players to express themselves a little bit more going forward, we've got every chance of frustrating teams and beating teams again. But another disappointing afternoon. It's finished Wolves 1, Manchester City 2. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.